Hey, welcome back to Diabolic Shrimp, the least professional talk show on the internet. I'm your host, best-selling author, comic creator, and video game designer, Josh Grant. And today we have a special guest, near and dear to my heart, actually, Mike Kimmel. The guy's got a heart of gold. I absolutely love getting to talk to him. I always learn something new. He has such a wealth of knowledge. He's also the poor guy that was kind enough to say yes to helping me start this show. He was my poor guinea pig way back at the beginning. In fact, if you want to watch any of that, if you haven't subscribed to the show, subscribe to the show. But if you look all the way back through our live chats, all the way back to video number one, you'll see Mike Kimmel. And but if you're watching this, have no idea what this is Diabolic Shrimp. We love to be interactive with our audience. I love to interview interesting and famous people from around the world. So if you're watching us live, I know several of you are. Thanks for joining us over there in the live chat. Throw your comments over there. I love to be interactive. In fact, we have we already have Nicole, Pachil, hello from New Mexico's land of enchantment. All right, hola. And so welcome to Diabolic Shrimp. Well, yeah, if you all have questions for Mike Kimmel comments, we'd love to put him in the hot seat. Really quick, a word from our highlighted books before we get to Mike. And so we have sharing You Open Up is actually a website, youopenup.com. Sharing your story is empowering. Through the stories of others, we aim to inspire, heal, enlighten, and nurture the human spirit. This platform was created to share personal nonfiction stories, daily diary activities, and open letters. Whether you're looking for a moral compass or a brave step to heal your heart, this platform will warmly bring us together. You can share stories. It's actually a really cool thing. And then down below this, our last highlighted book, Positive Vision from Ken Brandt. I interviewed him a while back as well. Awesome story, really funny guy as well. A rollicking, rambling ripper of a read. Great for anyone who likes adventure, humor, memoirs, and a bit of inspiration. An adventure, humor-filled journey that includes being dragged by galloping horses in Montana, helping firefighters combat an arson blaze, captaining his university parachuting team, and a long, convoluted, successful chase of a thief in New York City. So that's Positive Vision. So if you like those, the website or that book, they're in the description below. Mike Kimmel's books are also in the description below. We also have, let's see, Joanna Chavez. Hi, Joanna. Welcome. And so, all right, a bit about Mike before we bring him on. I know he's waiting in the wings for a second. So Mike Kimmel is an experienced actor, public speaker, playwright, teacher, and an audition coach. He is a 20-plus year member of SAG-AFTRA, which is the Screen Actors Guild, with extensive experience in both the New York and Los Angeles markets. He has worked with directors Francis Ford Coppola, Robert Townsend, Craig Shapiro, and Christopher Kane, amongst many others. TV credits include Game of Silence, Zoo, Treen, In Plain Sight, Cold Case, Breakout Kings, Memphis Beat, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. He was a regular sketch comedy player on The Tonight Show with Jay Leno for 11 years. I mean, that is a great resume to have. A fun guy, and we're going to talk to him all about his whole career. Again, if you want to support him, check out his books. He's got some really awesome audition books. We'll talk a bit about those today as well. So he's been in the wings for a bit. So let's welcome him on. Mike, welcome back to Diabolic Shrimp.
Oh, thank you very much, Josh. I always say anytime I see the great Joshua Grant, it's better than any 972 days that I don't see the great Joshua Grant.
I was like, you're so nice, Mike. I was like, you're actually he's required to say that while he's on the show. Ask him later what he really thinks of me. And so, Mike, it's so wonderful to have you back. I mean, you've got quite the crowd too. Let's see. Christopher Jones says hello from Chris in Los Angeles. Well, hello, Chris. I hope you're enjoying. I hope it's not too rainy for you out there. I know it's been rainy lately in Los Angeles. Well, Mike, it's so wonderful having you back on. I know last time you were on, you were my poor guinea pig. I had to learn a lot while I was working on the show. But I think a great way to introduce people or reintroduce them is through a bit of show and tell. Did you happen to bring us anything for show and tell?
I did, Joshua. As you know, I've been an actor and writer for many years, and one of the things I like to tell people is you've got to use what I call the crazy glue technique. In order to get your books done, you got to be willing to crazy glue yourself into the chair at your desk and just to get that content done. So one of the things I use is, I got to bring this out. I think you'll appreciate this. This is the stuff I
Yes.
use. I got to knock some of the obstacles out of my way. Sometimes you got to break down walls. You got to break down the obstacles so that you can sit there and get your content done. Because there's no substitute for getting your content done and getting your content created, as you know, because you've written many books yourself.
Yeah. there's only 4 people that are worthy to hold that hammer. You got like Captain America, Thor, you know, like She-Thor, and Mike Kimmel.
Yeah.
So it's pretty impressive.
And Superman did it too, but that's just because Odin took the spell off so he could hold it. But then there are other times when you also need to just use your shield. Sometimes you just have to protect yourself. There are days when you know there's going to be a lot of stuff coming at you. Stuff's coming at you. So you've got to protect yourself and ward off the things that are not going to be good for your content creation. So I always say we've got to be willing to protect our time even more than our money, because you can always make more money. You can never make more time. And you and I can't be at our best if we're spending all that time driving friends to the airport, carrying refrigerators up and down the stairs for people and doing all that other stuff. It's great to be friendly and gracious and helpful, but you also have to be very, very protective, overprotective of your time.
That's Mike's passive aggressive comment. Whichever neighbor is making him carry refrigerators, please stop if you're watching that. He's got a hammer. You got to watch out. No,
sure.
Well, Mike, it's like, yeah, you're one-upping yourself. Like I said, my niece is always bringing up the piece of pie you brought last time. Mike's always bringing the greatest, like, off-the-wall props and has a wonderful life lesson. That's my experience with you, Mike. It's like you find these wonderfully creative ways to demonstrate these really, really meaningful lessons. So, well, Mike, I'm just so excited today to last time, if people want to watch again, if you're joining us live here, you can always check in the description below. You can find Mike's books. Last time, you can find our video from last time as well. And way back when, it's our very first video on Diabolic Shrimp. But like, we talked a lot about your books and your monologues. You have these wonderful audition, I think would be great for auditions. For people that just joined us and don't know me, my background is actually acting. I used to be a stage actor before I was an author and video game designer and all this. But I found them like just wonderful resources for people that are like looking to audition, and you've wrote it for, you know, kids and adults, and it's like everything under the sun. There's monologues, there's dialogues, and you're so creative. And so, but I wanted to dive more today. We're going to talk all about this a little bit later. I want to dive more into like, you have this amazing career and in acting world, and you're such a positive, wonderful person. So I'd love to hear a bit, like, you've had this story career in acting and teaching.
Yes.
What have been some of the highlights for you personally in your career?
Oh gosh, I guess the number one highlight, dual number one highlight would be working with Francis Ford Coppola couple of years back on a movie called Distant Vision. This was something that he wanted to do for 30 years, and he never did it until he got to the age of 75. And he told the story.
It's a coming of age story, right? And it's kind of what it was, right? It was kind of like a coming of age story for like a Italian.
Exactly right. It encompasses 3 generations of his own family. It's loosely autobiographical. And I actually played the grandfather that he remembered from when he was a little boy, around 1910. So it was great. It worked, got to do some vintage stuff and some great old props we got to work with. It was just wonderful working with him for a couple of months. And he let me use some of my own dialogue and put some dialogue and contribute some dialogue into the scripts. And then he wrote a book about the project a year or 2 afterwards, and he put me all through the book and had some real nice things to say. So I really appreciated that. Yeah.
Oh, what a neat experience. I was like, I personally would feel like super nervous having to play like a well-liked grandpa of like such a like a, you know, such a powerhouse like Francis Ford Coppola, right? It's like such a huge name. So how did you like what did you do to like kind of prepare a little bit for that role?
You just have to delve right into the script. There's no substitute for taking the script and just really just attacking it. You got to attack that script, and you got to know it backwards, forward. I say know the script backwards, forwards, and sideways, because when you're going through the filming process, you've got to do things over and over and over again, and you have to be able to account for technical glitches or if a prop's not going to work right. So if they pick up script, pick up a part of the dialogue, maybe in the middle of a long passage, I got to know exactly where that point is so I can go right to it. So you got to know your dialogue. There's no substitute for experience knowing your dialogue. I say backwards, forwards, and sideways.
Well, what's your method? Because it's like everyone kind of has a different method. I back in the day, that was actually my biggest challenge, was that getting really familiar with the script. And I agree with you. I was like, as soon as you're familiar with that, everything builds from there. And so, but like, what was your kind of like method of like tackling the script? And
still the same. I use the greatest invention of all time. I call them index cards. You take a little index card. I write my dialogue out. Usually, I still do that today. I've been doing that since I started. I would actually use 2 different color pens for my dialogue and the other character's dialogue, and I'll use different color index cards as well. I keep them with me and stash them away in a side pocket. I'll also record the dialogue. Sometimes I'll use different voices for the different characters. So I'll really immerse myself in the script, record it on my phone, and play it back while I'm reading the dialogue off the index cards. It's also
I was going to say, Mike, you played every character in Distant Vision, right? You were all of them, right?
In my head, I sure did. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's actually a great exercise that I do with my acting students. As a matter of fact, you take a script, and it's very valuable to flip it and play both characters, both sides of the script.
And I think it's fun. I think that's just a fun like exercise.
Yeah, and then a lot of actors get into the bad habit also of you're in a scene and I'm waiting for my line, I'm waiting for my line, I'm waiting for my line. Now here's my line. But when you really practice performing the other characters' lines as well, then you understand really the arc of the scene and where it's going and the storyline. Sometimes you have to look at a scene and you really have to ask yourself, what's the greater context? What's really going on? What's happening? And then how can I adapt my own character
to like enhance that or whatever?
Exactly. To move the storyline.
Awesome. Well, Nicole is asking you like, Nicole, do you use a screenplay software? I find that fascinating. I actually don't know. I've been out of acting for quite a while, and I used to do stage acting. So I was like, I don't even know what a screenplay software is. So
yeah, there's a couple of different ones that are marketed. They're all good, but what I like to do is write everything out by hand, a little bit old fashioned on the index cards. When I'm writing a script, just then transcribe it. Excuse me, transcribe it on the computer. But
no, I definitely connect with you there. If I could pan the camera down, you'll see I look like a serial killer. I've got sticky notes and note cards everywhere. Actually, yeah, it's part of like my video game I'm working on and things. It's like these days I'm very old school, so I write everything longhand. All my novels are all longhand, so I've like got piles everywhere. I look like a detective or something. And so, awesome. Donna here, by the way, is saying, Donna Ferris, hi from your neighbor in Jubilee, Curly.
Yes, Curly, how you doing? All right.
So, well, that's great. Well, it's like, so I'm curious from you, like, so with this career, I mean, you've had a career in television and film, in teaching and in writing. And so what have been some of the biggest challenges you faced along the way before we kind of do a picture walk and look through your career?
Oh, God. I think the biggest challenge for any person is actors have a tendency to compare themselves to other people, especially if there's someone of a similar type or a similar age, similar background. But what's more valuable is to compare yourself to who you were yesterday. So don't compare yourself to where someone else is or a high-level, high-profile person is today. Compare yourself to where you were yesterday and who you were yesterday, and then recognize that we all have different skills and abilities and aptitudes. Einstein said it best. Einstein said, everybody is a genius. However, if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, that fish will spend its whole life believing that it's stupid.
That's one of my favorite quotes of all time, by the way. And so I'm glad you brought that one up. That one,
and,
I
and
used to have
Einstein was
hanging on the
a
wall.
character. Yeah, Einstein was, Einstein dated Marilyn Monroe, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Now, the two of them were seemingly opposites, but they filled a lot of great needs, great roles for each other. Einstein was really a character who liked to be an extrovert and life of the party. And Marilyn Monroe, she was very introspective and was always reading, kind of like a scientist.
They both had problems with wind, she has the wind blowing up the dress and he's got the wind in his hair all the time, so
yeah.
And so, well, let's take a look. We're going to do a little bit of a picture walk of your career, your professional life, and talk a bit about it. So are you ready? We're going to go down a bit down memory lane here. We'll kind of put our little pictures on the side, and then
all right.
Yeah, well, and before we get there, it looks like I'm sorry. Let's see. Veronica Dunigan, it says, "Do you miss Hollywood?"
Oh no, Hollywood. Hollywood is a state of mind. Hollywood is in your heart and in your mind, and it's always a part of you.
So, well, excellent. Well, all right. Well, all the world is a stage, is what we used to say. So, because people asked me before, it's like, do you miss acting? I was like, I love acting, but I was like, everything I'm doing nowadays is still a bit of acting. So, Absolutely. All right, here we go. So, we're gonna go through a little bit of picture walk. So, tell us a bit about it. So, here's you on like the Tonight Show. It's like you did that for years. You were a regular on there, and hilarious on there, and you and Jay Leno would kind of riff a bit. So like, what were some of the most like fun moments that you had like on like say like the Tonight Show?
Oh my God! Well, Jay he really liked potty humor. So he liked bathroom humor. So there were a couple of really funny incidents that had happened in the news. And what the Tonight Show writers would do every day is they'd put together ideas based upon things that were current events, things that were topical that had just occurred. So whenever something crazy would happen, there was one story, as a matter of fact. There was a guy who was suing one of the casinos in Las Vegas. He went into the casino, into the restroom, and into the stall to do his business. And somebody had put crazy glue on the seat, and he got stuck on the casino. True story. So I heard that on the news, and I said
he was just following your advice, Mike. I was like, he was just trying to get his stuff done right with the crazy glue.
That's right, crazy glue technique. That's right. But working with Jay Leno was fantastic. He was extremely gracious and just very friendly all the times I was there. And every once in a while, of course, you'll see a prop won't work right, or scheduling will be off, or sometimes a guest wouldn't show up and you had to make last minute adjustments. But I never, honestly, in 11 years, I never saw the guy lose his temper, never saw him go off on anybody, never heard him say a curse word. He was really incredibly gracious.
Good on him. I was like, I get nervous at the show and I just start screaming at poor Mike. You didn't see it. It was before we were live here. But so, well, we have by the way, Peter, sorry, Peter, I'll butcher your last name if I try it. So, but he says, Mike is my friend, great actor. I agree with you. What a great guy too. And
thank you.
Here's a guy that's near and dear to my heart right here. Truth 719. This is my brother right here. Hello from Pueblo, Colorado. And so my brother's a wonderful voice actor. If anyone's out there looking for a good voice
my God, he's in Pueblo, Colorado. That's
good Pueblo. And so
I was born in Pueblo, Colorado.
Oh, really? I had no idea. Sorry.
Yeah, the eastern part of Pueblo was so far east. It was in the Bronx.
Yeah, I got you. And so Nicole, Mike is my new friend, and I really enjoy our time together. Thanks, Mike. And so
Nicole is a terrific screenwriter, and she does a little bit of everything. And
yeah, our audience is too nice, Mike. I was like, put Mike in the hot seat, everybody. We got to ask him the hard questions right here. And so see, look, too nice. They're laughing at what you're saying.
There are no hard questions. There are only easy answers.
Yeah. Okay.
The way you interpret it.
Let's find the really hard questions, so Mike will stop telling us that. And so, all right, so Mike, like, what were some like the prep you did? Because you talked about, say
Yes.
Jay Leno didn't get flustered if like a guest didn't show up. On
Yes.
your end of like doing some of the sketches and stuff. What was some of the prep work like?
It's interesting you asked that, because I think one of the things that actors really need to remember is that they're part of a larger ensemble. They're part of a larger piece of the puzzle. They're one piece of a giant puzzle. And we have a tendency to only think about our own perspective when we go on to a show. So I would always say, okay, I'm going on the Tonight Show today, and I didn't work there every day, but I worked there, thank goodness, thank God, very, very often. And it was a great opportunity. And I would always tell myself when I'm driving over there, all right, this is not the Mike Kimmel show. And it's not even the Jay Leno show. It's the Tonight Show with Jay Leno. He's the guy in charge, and people are tuning into the Tonight Show. And here's a definition I came up with that I share with my acting students and in my books. And here's the new book. The definition of an actor is a character that is brought into a script to move the storyline forward in a specific way. So sometimes you might get a role on a TV show or a film, and it might be a very small role. And throughout your career, you'll do bigger roles, you do smaller roles. When you get a small role, I like to look at that, or if a student or someone I'm coaching has a small role, I look at that and try to get a sense of the bigger perspective. What's really going on in the scene? What's the theme of the show? And if it's a small role, I say to myself or my student, all right, this looks like a role that cannot be cut, because the character might just be in there for one scene or two scenes, but you're there to deliver important information to the lead character to move the storyline forward. And just very important,
Or
not
even extras, right? If you cut the extras, it's weird if someone's walking down New York City, right? It's like nobody's in the background, and so it's like
absolutely,
you're like an important part
yeah,
of everything. And so like no small parts, right? Only small actors, as they used to
exactly.
say in the gig. And so
We
talking about
still say it.
wonderful
Oh,
actors, right?
there's my main man, number
Dwayne
one.
Michaels. Yeah, he says Mike is my acting coach, and he is top notch. Hey,
Oh
Mike.
my gosh, Dwayne is a guy who's just been very, very hardcore, very aggressive, has a tremendous work ethic. I gave him the nickname Charlie Hustle, because he just keeps going from one project to the next to the next. He's building quite a career, and new in the business, ex-military and ex-cop. And I think a lot of times people come from another career or another field, and they might think, oh my gosh, I haven't been an actor for years, and 20 years, I didn't go to Juilliard. But it's actually your life experiences from other careers that can be very helpful in the entertainment industry too.
Yeah, well,
So
and I think it goes both ways too. I'd recommend anyone going out and trying some acting, because I
for
used to
sure.
act, and now I draw a lot of from that, especially like stage design when I do comics. And so,
Yeah,
well, continue our little journey here through
sure.
the amazing
Let's
life
see
of
some
Mike. I feel
pictures.
like you get to
Oh,
be
there she
you get to be
is.
really walking. Yeah, so here's a picture of you. I just captured in passing. Actually, I was like,
Oh
oh.
yeah.
Mike Kimmel just casually being on Oprah, and so tell us a bit, tell us a bit about this, like what's going on here.
Oh my God, that was wonderful. I got invited to be on her show. We did a little gag. She was doing an episode called Gags and Practical Jokes, and I participated in a gag, and she brought me from Los Angeles to Chicago. And I spent a lot of time in Chicago years ago, and I always say I like to go back to Chicago twice a year just to look for my old hubcaps. But Oprah was extremely gracious, very similar to Jay Leno, in fact, in that everyone you meet on the show, a big show like that, from the top on down, was extremely gracious, extremely friendly. Nobody lost their temper. Nobody's losing their cool. Hollywood is known for having, there's a term they use, big personalities. Sometimes if they'll audition you and interview you for a job in front of the camera or behind the camera, they'll ask you, oh, can you handle big personalities? That means you got a lot of screamers, you got a lot of people who are up and down in their emotions. And what I just loved about actually Oprah and Jay Leno was they were both in charge of these gigantic TV shows with huge casts and crews, and they were extremely gracious. So everyone on the show, from Oprah and Jay Leno down to the person who would put the microphone on you, was always very friendly, very gracious, very well-mannered. And I always appreciated that.
Yeah, are you a big personality, Mike?
No, but I wanted to show you one thing I do. I wanted to tell you, I just brought those props just when I'm on the road. Can you see
Yeah,
that?
here I'll bring it back to us so
I
people
have
can
a
see it a
little
little bit
mini
better.
hammer on a chain, and I usually have that with me just as a reminder when I'm out if I can't carry my big hammer or my shield. And I want to show you my car keys. I got my shield right there on my car keys.
I
So
love that.
we have to remind ourselves to insulate ourselves from negative influences so that we can do our content creation and knock it out of the park. Use your hammer to knock it out of the park.
I'd love to see you as a big personality because I just can't imagine it. I can't imagine that, Mike. You're always so nice. It's like, well, so for you, have you ever do you ever get nervous before you go on?
I think every actor gets nervous,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a tendency to. I think the expression goes, "Don't try to get rid of your butterflies. Try to get all the butterflies to fly in formation. Try to use that nervousness." I had a great teacher when I was getting started, Michael Shurtleff. He wrote the book Audition, and he always said people are always telling actors to breathe and relax and calm themselves down, but he says that's really the wrong approach. It's more valuable to think of yourself as a racehorse in the stall before you go out, before you charge out there. Use that nervous energy for your benefit.
Yeah, well, and I agree. I was actually a very shy person. Acting got me out of my bubble, but I still get nervous, and it's like you learn how to focus that in a weird way.
Sure.
And I think that's kind of neat. Todd D, another actor here,
Oh,
very very happy to have
yes.
Mike as my acting coach. What's
Todd
up, Dwayne and Mike?
Incredible.
So,
You guys are great. Yeah, Todd's a terrific actor, and he's got a great background in public speaking, former pastor, and there's just no shortage of ways that you can use your background in a multitude of different fields for your advancement in showbiz. There's something for everybody.
yeah, well, and so for you yourself, getting to kind of work with a lot of these
Yes.
different folks. I mean, you've worked with everyone from just entry level experience all the way up to like Francis Ford Coppola, right? It's like, have you ever been like yourself? Like, is there anyone that made you starstruck or something, or have you ever gotten that way?
No, honestly, no. Not to boast, but it makes. Here's a little secret. It makes them nervous when you get all starstruck and you approach them like a
I'm
fan,
sure.
and you don't want to get them to. There were a couple of guys. Oh my gosh! One time on the Tonight Show, this is a funny story. Normally, you'd have your own dressing room. You'd be there all day. There was one time in particular where there was a lot going on, and Matchbox 20 was there. If you remember the old band, Matchbox 20, I think they're still doing great music. But we had three guys in the room sharing a room because it was so crowded. They had so many people on the set that day. And I'd been there many, many times. And there was a guy who was there for his first time, and he was so nervous and just wanted so much to excel and do his best, and just kept asking for extra things. And, oh, can I get my girlfriend tickets to the show? And I'm telling him, listen, just calm down and just do your job. Just remember why you're here. It's not here for networking, not here to get all your family on the show. And it's just really important to remember that the actor's job is to move the storyline forward. But no, you want to stay calm and not treat your job as though you're a fan. And I've had over the years friends or people from different jobs I was on, they knew I was going to be on the Tonight Show or on another show, and they'd say, "Oh, can I go with you? Can you bring me?" I said, "No, I'm going to work."
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome to bring them to this show. We're the least professional talk show, so just bring the whole crowd. And so the story doesn't actually ever move on this show anyway. So it's like I have terrible pacing. So all right, well, Nicole here, bringing the writer's perspective. And we are going to actually talk about more from a writer's perspective in just a few minutes.
Sure.
But Nicole says, when you write your dialogue, do you make any special marks where your beats and or arcs are?
Sometimes, but not always. I'll use an ellipsis, just the three dots, an ellipsis, just to show that there's a little pause there. But in playwriting for the stage, very often they'll use extensive stage direction. Then they'll write beat, BEAT,
Yeah.
parentheses. But I think it's more valuable for the actor to discover those parts themselves. We don't want to give the actor no room to express themselves. The writer writes a script, actor comes in and performs it. And if you don't let the actor do their thing, then I always say you may as well just do it as a puppet show. If you want to
Mm.
have total creative control, it sounds great on paper, but you sometimes get a greater overall experience when you let other professionals in the field come in and use their areas of expertise too.
Yeah, it's a really interesting balancing act because back in the day when I used to do plays, it's like I had one director, wonderful guy, and
Yes,
he was really great about being like kind of do you, and he would be good about giving you the points that he's like this needs to happen
right.
here, and then we at the end of my career there, it's like you had another director that was he was very like you said, a puppeteer. It was very
Yeah,
like you had no freedom, and I was like, what's the point? It's kind of
sure,
thing. And
sure.
so it was interesting. Oh, Nicole, always so nice here, Nicole. I knew I adored you for a good reason.
It's funny.
So
Yeah,
all right, well, so let's look at since we're kind of talking a little bit directing here and stuff. Let's take
okay.
a look here.
Oh, yes.
So good old. So you
Oh,
got this
yeah.
wonderful experience, Francis Ford Coppola. For
Yeah,
people that I guess don't know him, it's like very famous for doing like The Godfather, but other like fantastic, a huge career of like my dad's favorite is Patton, and so
oh, yeah.
he worked on Patton and
Nice.
got fired from it at one point and then came back on,
You did. You
and then
did.
he did Patton, he did The Outsiders. I absolutely love
Yeah.
The Outsiders, and so Apocalypse
Rumblefish.
Now, and so
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean he's got this long career,
Nice.
and you got to be work with him on Distant Vision.
Yes.
Here's some pictures from Distant Vision as well,
Oh, you have
and so
photos from that project. Wonderful. Yeah, that
yeah.
was quite an experience.
Yeah, so for when it comes to this, like what was just give us a little bit of the experience of like what was it like being on the set, because a lot of people will watch this and like we're thinking about acting, but that's like another world for some people, and so what was life like on the set, and what was it like? I come from the stage personally, so
Yeah.
what is it
Yeah,
like having to meet the mark? It's like on the stage you have like
for
constant,
sure.
everyone's always watching you somewhere,
Sure. Yeah.
whereas like movies wise you have to be really like kind of specific,
Very
so just
precise.
tell us a little bit about that experience.
The precision, you're exactly right. The precision aspect in movies and TV is really important. And actually, you see that top left photo of
Hmm.
me and Francis, the silver vehicle in the background is a vehicle that he's had since the 70s. It's called the Silverfish. It's a long silver trailer or motorhome, and inside it was tripped out with I think they had 36 monitors. So we had 34 or 36 cameras going at the same time on
Wow.
distant vision. And he was in there. So very often when we're doing that, very often when we're doing our scene, we couldn't really see him because he's in there. He's in the vehicle watching on all the different monitors. And actually he comes from a theater background too. So on this project, we did, I think on all his projects, we practiced in the same way that theater projects
Oh,
will
interesting.
practice and prepare. Yeah, a lot of prep work, a lot of moment before, and he would do some really interesting things. We had some scenes that were written and that we performed improvs based upon what happened before that scene. So what if there's a married couple in the scene? Even if we didn't film it, they would do a scene about how they met, even if it's not in the script, and we would perform that as an improv and act that out. And I
That's
felt that
awesome.
was
I
pretty
wish I
enjoyable.
hope they like I don't know, I hope they filmed some of that, because I was like that would be,
We
to me,
did.
I was like
We
I think
did.
that would just be such an interesting thing for like say like the
Yeah,
like the DVD or whatever, the extras
exactly.
is like, because
Exactly.
I think that's such an interesting thought, I guess, coming from like the other side of it, like, I do comics and
Sure.
I do a lot of like writing things like that sometimes in the comics where it's like in my head there's this whole story going on
Yeah.
between them that
Where they
no
come
one's ever
from.
gonna see, right? And it's
Yeah.
like, and so I think that's really cool that you actually played that out. Alan here, by the way. Alan got
Alan Gilead.
Gilead. So
Gilead.
you the man. So you the man, Mike. And so
No.
yeah,
I'm
this
super
is
deep.
actually Mike right up here. You can see him right here. This is Mike Kimmel playing the Godfather. That was one of the previous scenes that they acted out.
Oh,
And so
God.
no, not really. And so and
Well,
then
Josh, what you could do also is, oh God, nice message from Andrea.
yeah,
What you
Andrea
could do
hits.
also, Josh, is those scenes that you write out for your characters that aren't in the comic. That could be a prequel. That
Yeah,
could be another
that's
comic.
that's kind of where it goes. It's like, and well, and I think that see, I love these kinds of things nowadays, especially doing comics, because it's a little bit more visual, it's a little bit more
Yeah.
directing, and I find it
Yes. Yes.
interesting,
Yes.
like what informs the story, and kind of what
For
you were saying,
sure.
like the actor is part of this overarching story, and it's important to think about that. It's important to think about their background,
Yeah.
and I think that's just so neat because like I'm transferring, like, say, the Fifth Ascendant. I wrote this brick of a book, a fantasy book. It's like
Yes.
the best like world I've ever created, but it's not necessarily my bestseller. So I'm turning it into a comic now. But I find it interesting
Right.
that the visual is
Yes.
starting to really inform the story. I'm like, what would that look like, and why did they build this building this way? And
Yes.
I start to go off on a tangent that no one's ever going to know. But I think it's interesting to see that in the acting world. I think it's interesting to see that you all played those scenes. I think that's actually really fun. Andrea, by the way, wonderful
Oh my
author,
gosh.
very supportive of other people.
Oh,
And
she's incredible.
yeah, Andrea says Josh and Mike are the absolute best creative professionals. How cool to see
Oh,
them together in this interview. God bless. You're always so nice, Andrea.
oh my
It's
God. And Andrea, we should say, is a very accomplished author in her own right. How many books has she written?
she's written, oh
Every
gosh,
spy
like
series.
six or seven. So she's got a spy series. She's got
Yeah.
a fantasy series as well. And so, yeah, and she has an audiobook. I got to interview, if people are interested, a couple
She's
videos
amazing.
back, I interviewed her audio cast. And for
Yeah.
those people that are watching, acting wise, she hires actors and actresses as well
Yeah, she's
for
incredible.
audiobooks. And so, well, let's continue the journey into Mike though. I was like,
Let's see.
so here we
Oh
are.
my gosh. Yeah.
So here's a bit of a
Oh,
throwback here, and so
yeah.
here's you, and like this is on
Oh,
Buffy the Vampire Slayer is
yeah.
what this one's taken from.
Yeah.
You've
Yeah.
done
Yeah.
like guest spots on a bunch of hit shows like that, and Zoo, and Miami Beat, and I couldn't get a picture of you in Zoo, since apparently
Oh.
there's a like famous like snake wrangler that's also named Mike Kimmel. And
Yeah.
so if I type in Mike Kimmel Zoo, it's you get beat by the snake wrangler apparently.
Oh,
And I'll interview him someday too. We'll get you both on the show, like two Mike Kimmels. And so,
absolutely.
but so what do you enjoy out of doing like kind of more of a guest spot versus like being a regular? Like you were like a regular on like Tonight Show. It's like doing a guest spot on shows. Like, what's something you enjoy out of doing, like maybe say like a smaller role? What's something that maybe you get out of that?
Well, it's a great question. It trips up a lot of actors, but again, you have to look at the smaller role. Actually, this episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that was a pretty small role. It was just one scene. However, you have to think about what's valuable of that scene. In that scene, I got to work with Sarah Michelle Gellar, who played Buffy, and I had to deliver an important piece of information to her. So she was looking for a killer, and she had to come to the butcher shop, my butcher shop, and I played a butcher. We're in the freezer, and I had to walk her through a couple of things and give her the name of a guy who's been purchasing a certain thing that incriminated him. So I looked at that scene and I said, okay. And actually, for this role, I had auditioned for two previous roles on Buffy that I didn't get. That someone else got the part, and that's hard. But then when the third time came around, even though it was a smaller role, I booked that part, was able to do it. Was very happy to be there.
You originally auditioned to be Buffy, right? I was assuming as
Oh,
much, but
never know. You never know. Nowadays.
Yeah, that's true. I was like, well, what's I think it's that's part of the fun of doing, like, especially a bunch of different roles like this, is
Sure.
part of the fun of just like, just getting to be someone else. And I think it's fun that you can just go home and be like, what did you do today, like at work? I was like, I helped Buffy find a killer. It was
That's right.
just casually. So
Yeah.
what's I guess what's maybe challenging about doing a guest spot? So it's like, something like say you're a little bit more involved, like say like like the Tonight Show, you have a little bit more like say in this, or like say like the part with Francis Ford Coppola, it's like that was more of like an established, just like one-off kind of
Yeah.
film, and where
Yeah.
you
Exactly.
you like you got to have a little bit more say in the character. But like, what would you say is the challenge of like having to come into like the middle of a series and just play a guest spot?
Yeah. It's a good question. What happens is that you have to remember you don't really know what you're walking into. It's like you're walking into someone else's family reunion or someone else's high school reunion. You don't know what the vibe is on the set. So what I would normally do is ask everybody I know. I'd look at the show, and if it's been around for a while, chances are I could find somebody who's done a previous episode, who's been there. Or you hear things through the grapevine and you say, well, okay, what type of project is this? What's the vibe? Are there a lot of big personalities? And it's just valuable to gain your experience on as many different projects as you can, so that you walk into a new show and you're not thrown by anything that can come your way. We had
Yeah,
Rose saying,
definitely. Well, Tina says it well. You're
oh, yeah.
versatile, Mike. Tina says Mike is great with drama as well as comedy. It's amazing to watch his reel and and see his versatility.
Oh, gosh, you're
So
very kind. Thank you. But you have to be able to do comedy and drama. Comedy is a little more challenging, and drama is a little bit more direct. But you have to be able to do both, and you have to be able to do big roles, small roles, and as we say, keep your knees bent and ready to go in any direction, like a basketball player.
yeah,
So
well, and so it's kind of interesting. Would you say if someone's getting into acting, this just sparked off the top of my head, like for me, I got my start in comedy, and
yeah,
then I went Shakespeare, and then my
yeah.
career ended in tragedy. So I like to say it ended in
Ah,
tragedy, right? And it's like, and but like, so would you recommend, if someone's getting into acting, that they go a certain route or another, like when it comes to like the genre? Like, would you say like, hey, if
oh,
you're getting into acting, maybe start with comedy because it's the more challenging one,
yeah.
or start with this one because it's easier? What would you feel?
Well, you start with whatever the job requires. You start with what's available and accessible, because you never know where your area of expertise is going to be, or you never know what's going to be your area of your greatest strength. Uh,
Yeah.
you can be very good with comedy, but then I had a good friend, Jean Carroll. She wrote the foreword to one of my books, Monologues for Teens, and she is just hilarious. We used to always say Jean is a sitcom waiting to happen. Then she got her big break. Got the biggest thing she did was on a soap opera, and she's gorgeous. So she fit on the soap opera, but it wasn't where I would have thought, or even she would have thought her area of greatest success would be. So you never know where you're going to have the most success, or where the audience is going to see you. The world may see you very differently from how you see yourself.
Yeah, I think my niche is like, like C-SPAN announcer or like golf announcer, just like that kind of monotone drone, like maybe the emergency broadcast system. That's where I kind of hit my sweet spot. And so
Oh,
so here, last one for your
oh
career, and then
yes.
and then we're going to talk all about we're actually going to talk a lot about your books and like dialogue and
Oh,
how to kind of
sure
like
thing.
write and maybe like practice as an actor. So here's a little
Whatever
bit of
you
a
say.
throwback. I thought this was fun. Here's
Yeah.
Mighty Mike right here. And so Mighty
Yes.
Mike
Yes.
Kimmel.
Yes.
And so way back when, people maybe might not know that before all the acting was wrestling, coast to coast
Yeah.
wrestling here. And
That's
so
right.
tell us a bit about Mighty Mike. First off, like,
Oh.
where did that name come from?
Oh my God. Mighty Mike was a name I adapted from one of my heroes, who was the Mighty Atom, Joseph Greenstein. He was from Brooklyn. I was from the Bronx, and he was an old time vaudeville strongman. And as a tribute to him, I adopted the name Mighty. But
Well, that's fun. I was like, well, and so how did wrestling
oh yeah.
affect your career as a whole?
Oh, it was a great way to get started. had been active in high school and college and lots of different sports. And after I graduated college, I wanted to continue. And I was in the gym a lot, and I knew a lot of pro wrestlers from the gym. I knew Tony Atlas and SD Jones and a lot of other guys like that, and the Valiant Brothers and Bruno Sammartino. And they helped me get started, helped me get trained. I had my first entry as a referee, actually. And after refereeing probably about a dozen times, a couple of guys said, you're able to keep up with us pretty well, and why don't you get yourself trained and get started? And I did that, and it was really just a great experience. And like Killer Kowalski said it best after he quit wrestling, he said, and I have to agree with him, he said, it's like hitting yourself in the head with a hammer every day. It just feels so good when you finally stop.
I was like, yeah. Don't do that with Thor's hammer. I'm
No.
pretty sure I think that'd be pretty rough for you. And so then I take it that I was gonna say, would you ever go back to wrestling? We're gonna make Mighty Mike the sequel.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. What another world to me? I'm like that's like an alien planet to me. I used to watch wrestling when I was younger, but like I could never imagine being out there. Even being out on stage was something new to me. But like that's a whole nother level. That's like athletic acting is what I would call it.
It's got its challenges for sure.
Yeah, well, and so DF, great answer. Enjoy your hilarious comic skits and also your serious roles,
oh
Tammy.
My gosh, Tammy!
Yeah. So yeah, today's Emily a serious role, and so here let's so we'll bring it back to us. We're going to, or actually let's actually dive in here a little bit. I do want to talk dialogue here. So you've had this amazing career that has helped you grow just as a person, and you convey this so well to other people. And so like I have like monologues for kids and tweens. I've reviewed like probably everything that you've written. It's like I love all your books. You have monologue books, you have dialogue books. It's everything from kids and tweens and teens and adults. And so you've literally written like monologues and dialogues for literally everything. And so these are like great audition prep things, by the way. But I was wondering, Mike, can you help coach me though? I was like, we're gonna do a little bit of dialogue together here, and so maybe show me. I want to learn from the master here, all right? And so I've got a little bit of dialogue that we might read together. For starters, like what is the first thing like someone should do when prepping for the audition? We talked a little bit about this earlier, like you kind of said master the script, but what should we do if I'm prepping for an audition? I'll bring up my by the way, if people are looking at these books, they're down in the description below. Support Mike, he's a great guy. But here's our dialogue. What's something I should do as an actor if I'm new to acting and I want to prep?
Great. So what you do, I'm looking at this dialogue. This is the first time I'm seeing this, and look at the dialogue. Ask yourself this question. For every scene or every monologue you perform as an actor, what was happening right before this scene interrupted you and took you out of the previous action?
Okay.
So if you're saying the first line is, what's the matter? The other character in the scene has to be doing something or giving the audience some type of indication that something's wrong, something's not quite right. So now this dialogue, it looks like it would work anywhere. It could be two people washing the dishes at home. It could be two people jogging. It could be two strangers. I could be a guy sitting on the subway, and you could come up and just sit right across from me, as sometimes they would do on the subway in New York. And all of a sudden they're glaring at you. And then that would justify you saying, what's the matter? Like, hey, what's wrong with you? Nothing. I'm fine.
You just had, by the way, Mike, the face. I'm always looking for the face when I interview people of like, if the stream freezes, I always hope it lands on that face. So I really hope that's the Mike Kimmel face that everyone will always remember, the scowling, what's the matter face. I loved it.
A lot of people have that impression of me anyway. I can get you a list after the show.
Well, and so you kind of brought up like, I wrote this late at night, so I'm not sure if it's any good, but I tried to actually make it very general, like you said, so it could be any scene, because we're gonna play around with it.
Well,
so let's say
anywhere.
Well, let's say I want to take this scene. And
Okay.
let's say I want to make it, I don't know, let's say acting wise, not
Sure.
dialogue wise. So we won't mess
Sure.
with the dialogue yet, but we can later. So acting wise, what if I want to make this into a tense scene? Let's say like the subway there. Acting wise, what might I try? Just like acting wise, like without messing with the
Sure,
dialogue.
sure. Well, I would say there's an indication there. I don't think you can see my cursor, but this line right here, you just made that up. The third line down, your character, you just made that up.
Yeah, there we
So
go.
each actor would have to decide in their own minds, if the director's not telling them, what that issue is that he's accusing the other character of making up. What was it that he's made up? So there was a previous little incident or a previous little miscommunication, and miscommunication and conflict is the essence of drama. So there's something that happened right before these two characters started this dialogue. So, and for each person, it might be a little bit different.
Yeah, well, and I love. By the way, it's like for everyone watching, I put poor Mike on the spot here. I actually never showed him
Okay.
any of this before. So,
Okay.
Nicole, by the way, asks, speaking of dialogue here, do you ever worry that comedic dialogue might be too offensive? And what is your recipe for reaching the masses, sans being over the top? So,
It depends on the project. The great rule of thumb, Gary Marshall used to say, you can play an over the top character with very realistic dialogue, or you can play a very realistic character doing over the top dialogue. But you can't play an over the top character with over the top dialogue, because otherwise it's cartoonish.
yeah,
So
well,
you
we
want
did.
to at
Oh,
least
go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry, you want to at least be very real and pretend that it's something that the audience could really believe is happening. Ideally, if you have a bunch of actors, if you're coming from a theater background, you know that a lot of theater actors, they'll congregate in small groups and they'll run their lines. You want to be doing it so realistically, and for TV and film as well. You want to be practicing so realistically that if someone walks by and hears you talking, they'll think it's a real conversation. And I've seen this multiple times. You're practicing dialogue, and then someone walks up and starts talking to you because they don't know you're practicing a scene. They just think you're having a conversation. So that's always the goal. The goal is to be practicing your lines so realistically that someone will walk up and not know that you're practicing. They'll think that you're just two people having a conversation, and they can join in.
And I love that tip. And interesting enough, we kind of did this. We used to run through lines. You used to
Yeah,
practice,
for
and we used
sure.
to do the back in stage days. It's like we would always say go extreme when you're starting, and then we reel it in, and then you find that sweet spot, because it's like too
You
reeled in is
can.
not fun to
Yeah.
watch. It's like, and so it's kind of interesting. We would actually we would take your character out to the most extreme, like big reaction, and then we pull it in, and then you try and make it as realistic as possible, kind of like what you were saying, Mike, where it's like as as people are going by, it sounds very natural. And
And that could be adapted too. You could maybe have the intention. Let's say you were doing it as a filmed piece with a director on TV or film, and you had the intention of doing it very over the top. All of a sudden, they've got to make a change, or there's a prop where you got to move the location. You don't have the location anymore. Actually, it happened to Francis Ford Coppola on The Godfather. They had a lot of locations that all of a sudden were not available because there were people behind the scenes working against the film being produced. So he was frequently losing his locations for quite a while. So you have to be adaptable, and you could intend to do a scene very over the top, and then maybe have to adapt it and change it and do it very, very withdrawn, very intimate, very direct to camera, very conversational.
I
And
love
it might work better in a different way than you anticipated.
Yeah, well, I love how you can get right into that mob boss voice. By the way, Mike, I was like, half the pictures I saw of you, everyone likes to cast you as a mob boss, which I think is
Oh
funny
my
because you're like,
gosh.
yeah, I think of you as like just the person with the heart of gold. So it's funny to see you as this mob boss all the time. So, all right, well, here let's run this scene. Would you like to run
Sure.
this scene together? And
Sure
so
thing.
we're gonna run this as a tense scene. So me is me, and you is you.
Okay.
Okay, and so you get to be you. You're in red there. And we're gonna start like we always started back in the day. So we're just gonna do a cold read. We're just gonna read the lines for
Yes.
starters. Then we're gonna go back through and I guess we'll go tense since we're talking tense. But
All right.
and then all right. What's the matter?
Nothing. I'm fine.
You just made that up.
What tells you that?
Everything, all of it. So what's the matter?
Everything. All of it.
Fun. Okay. And now we're going to spice it up just a bit. I know this is a
Okay.
bit of improv. Poor Mike. I'm throwing him on the spot. He just talked to us all
We
about
like it.
having the show must go on. So
For
we
sure.
had to make him improv just a bit. All right. So we're going to try this just a bit tense. Like you said, imagining what's going on before.
Sure.
What's the matter?
Nothing. I'm fine.
You just made that up.
What tells you that? Hmm?
Everything, all of it. So what's the matter?
Everything. All of it.
Fun. And so, all right. So acting wise, you talked about imagining the scene before you do stuff with your face. That tone. I'm always a huge fan of tone. It's that
Sure.
tiny thing. It's the rudder that moves the entire ship. But let's look at the dialogue now, because you write this amazing dialogue in your books. Again, people
Thank you.
watching, they're down in the description below. Read these books. They're great. They're great, useful tools for auditions, especially if you want to go into acting. But it's also just really fun dialogue, fun scenes. And so, what from your writer's perspective here, can you give us some pointers on like writing, like say if I want to like alter this scene
Yeah.
writing wise, like how could I alter it to say I guess maybe like make it more tense or make it more lighthearted?
Sure.
What would you say
Sure.
would be something I could do?
Why don't we just run through it again? You want to run it again, and
Let's run again.
I'll play my role totally differently, and it might give a total different spin to the scene. Maybe something you, as the writer, hadn't thought of, which is what the actor does. An actor brings. I wrote a monologue. I'll give you an indication. I wrote a monologue once in my third book, Monologues for Teens, and I always thought of it as a comedy. And a young lad, a teenage student at the time, who was very, very gifted, and she was just phenomenally competent actress, even at a very young age. She was 16, and she took this monologue. The first time I saw it performed out loud, she did it as a dramatic piece, and she was crying, and it totally was not the way I wrote it, but she totally made it work. So you can change the tone of the dialogue and change the tone of the scene.
All right. So and Veronica's requesting use an accent.
Use an accent. Okay.
All right. Well, I'll
What
try
accent? I don't got no accent. What's you talking about over here? What's the matter with you?
I got to dust off my acting skills. I got to. All right. So wait. So am I still me, right? And you're still you?
You're still me, and I'm going to play my role a little bit differently. Ready?
Yep. Sounds good. And lights, camera, and action. What's the matter?
Nothing. I'm fine.
You just made that up, I believe.
What tells you that?
Everything, all of it.
No.
So what's the matter?
Everything, all of it.
Every time. Sorry, I love it. And so, I get what you're saying, Mike. Right? It's like you can kind of see that right off the bat. Like we're just throwing in other words that just kind of naturally like flow out. And so, I'm glad you didn't improvise a slap me. That was something I was just watching the other night from what is it, the Menu, that movie. They were talking about some of the actors had to improvise quite a bit, and one of them, she just hauled off and smacked the guy, and she's like, because like that's the natural reaction to that thing, and they kept it in there. But I'm like, I got slapped like every night for like a whole month when I was doing like All My Sons, and she would miss by my wife in the play, and she would miss every time. I was supposed to be slapped, but she'd like miss every time and get like boxed by ear. I'm like, my head's like spinning. I'm like, don't fall into the audience, you know.
You gotta be careful. That's when you always really have to protect your scene partner. and practice good stage combat techniques. And there should be a stunt person there to help.
Yeah. I was like, stage combat's always very, very. It's so. Veronica, by the way, face purple crying. Thanks, Veronica. So, well, my last big question to you, Mike. Sadly, we're out of time, and I can only ever get to half of what we get to, right? And so,
keep going.
I'll get you. I'll have to get you back on, of course. Always, we'll make it like a yearly thing. It'll be my annual Mike Kimmel interview, and
let's do it every day.
I think we don't want to subject the audience to that, So we do have OSHA standards, and I feel like that'll damage them too much. But you've dedicated most of your life to spoken word and or just like communication. Why?
Oh, it's just something I wanted to do ever since I was 5 years old. For some reason, I would watch TV as a little kid in the beautiful Bronx, and I knew from a very early age that I wanted to be an actor. And I also knew, it's a very odd thing to know when you're 5 years old. I knew I wanted to write books, but I had no idea what those books would be. I just assumed back then they'd be textbooks or they'd be novels. And little did I dream that later on I'd start acting and
I always thought your writing sounded like it came from a 5-year-old. So I was just throwing that out there. I don't know. I'm sorry. I abuse all my poor guests.
You try to take something, and sometimes I look at something in the world that was interesting to me or annoying to me, and then I would try to put it into the perspective. How would this be from a 5-year-old's perspective? That's what I would do with the book for someone of that age. I had a neighbor who was a very nasty guy many years ago, and he came out and started yelling at me one day because I parked in front of his house. And I said to myself, okay, don't take the bait. Don't take the bait. Look at what's really going on here. If this is bothering me as an adult, how much more irritating or strange would it seem to a little kid who was maybe across the street, living across the street? So I wrote a monologue based upon a little kid's perspective of this guy coming out and yelling at me, which is much more valuable than me going full scorched earth mode. And
I hope you wrote that like monologue while the guy was yelling at you. I was like, I feel like that's actually a great way to like diffuse an argument. Like hold on just a second. Like, let me write that down.
Well, while he's yelling at me, I start thinking, how could I use this? I ask myself this question all the time. How can I use this? How can I use this? How can I use this? And actors should do that at auditions. Anything that comes up. It happened on stage years ago. You know this as a stage actor. You're on stage. It was actually in a very small theater, and a mouse ran across the stage. And then a cat ran across the stage chasing the mouse. So you got to use it. You got to improvise a line of dialogue and use it. But we can do that in real life too. So even though I just saw that dialogue you put up on the screen for the first time, I go through my day and I talk and have interactions with people all the time. So it's no different when the camera's on. Right. So we have to we're improvisational all day long in real life. So
all the world's a stage. That's why I call theater particle physics. It's everything that makes up everything. And so, well, Mike, I was like, we're pretty much out of time. Like last thing here, like how can we support you? Diabolic Shrimp is actually a very supportive community to across the arts. We love artists and authors and readers. We try to connect people. And so, how can we support you as a person?
Well, the way to support any author, best way to support an author is if you pick up one of their books, if you like it, if you think about, well, I like this book, and maybe look for another one. But before you look for another one, or before you put it down, say, you know what, let me go to the online site or the merchant site, wherever you purchase the book, and leave a short review. That's always a great thing for me or for you or for Andrea Hintz or any of the other authors out there. If you have friends who've written a book, the best thing that you can do is go to the site where you purchase the book and leave a little brief review. And that's valuable for the readers too. And make it specific. I liked such and such a part, or I like this monologue, or I like this character. I love the Native American character in The Lost Boy that you did, your book.
Thank you.
So that was my favorite character.
Yeah,
So
I do like Grandpa John. That's his name, and so
yes, yes,
he's definitely one of my favorites into that wise Miyagi figure. But thanks for the shout out for my
fantastic.
book too. I love The Lost Boy, and so well, Mike. I was like, thank you so much for being back on. Thank you so much for helping me launch Diabolic Shrimp in the first place.
Oh my
The
gosh,
channel.
it's always a pleasure.
All right, Mike, I'm going to send you back down to the nether realm as we sign out. So thanks for being on, Mike.
Thank you, Josh.
All right, hang out
Peace
for just
out.
a second. I'll be back with you in a second. So, well, that was Mike Kimmel again. Just a wonderful guy, heart of gold, vast wealth of knowledge. I can never pick his brain enough. Just in acting and writing, and Donna says, "And you help me." And then Nicole, great job. Thank you, Nicole. Tina, thank you both. Thank you so much for being on, for everyone that's joining us live. Again, if you want to support Mike, his books are in the description below. Some of our highlighted books from the beginning of this, a lot of fun highlighted books and website are in the link in the description below. If you want to support Diabolic Shrimp, definitely hit that subscribe button, ding that bell for noties, make it burn, and definitely support us. Anything I make from books or from this channel, I take a portion of those proceeds and put them towards universally good things like childhood disease research, ocean exploration, helping out solving the homeless situation for people. And so I like to put it towards these things. So you're helping out the world as well. And but thank you so much for joining us. If you're joining us later over there in the comments or down in the comments, sorry, go ahead and drop those comments. I love to share them with Mike after the fact. To sign us out here, Veronica says, "Sing a song." So long, farewell. Our Peter's ain't so long. No. So thank you all for joining us. This has been another, I'm not going to subject you to my singing. This has been another Diabolic Shrimp. Have a wonderful night.